Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being with us here again on the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. I'm just so grateful that you're one of the people that cares about that cares about living life consciously and being awakened and, really bringing your full self to everything that you do in life. And oh my, do I have a treat for you today. I'm so excited to bring to the Conscious Living Podcast, Cara Brookins, who is an author, 9-time author, 7 fiction and 2 nonfiction, very unusual combination of talents right there, and also a motivational speaker. I came across Cara on a social media platform called Quora, where her story of deciding to build her own house with her 2 young kids was posted, and I just found it to be captivating and reached out to her and asked her if she would bring that energy, that vibe, and that education and inspiration to our show. So, Cara, thank you so much for being here with us on the Conscious Living Podcast. Why don't you just go ahead and flesh out a few more things that you'd like our listeners to know about you?
Oh, thank you so much. Of course, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited about everything that you've done. I've enjoyed listening to the podcast, so I'm glad to be part of it. And there are 4 kids. I want to give all 4 kids equal credit here. So there are 4 kids who built the house, though I probably 2 of them would take the most credit for it. So that's fair.
Okay, right. 4 kids. So you had all 4 at the time that you decided to build the
I
house.
I did, yes. Yes, I built the house with 4 kids, couldn't have done it without them. I mean, people look at kids not as a full work crew, but I couldn't carry a sheet of plywood across a construction site without a teenager on the other side of it.
Right.
I
So,
was a 110-pound computer programmer, not a construction worker.
wow. So flesh it out for us. I mean, that is such a unique place to find yourself. I shared with you before we got on air that I'm in the process now of working with an architect and starting to make the plans to tear down a family cottage in upstate New York and rebuild a house. So maybe that's part of what got my attention when I read your story, is because I'm kind of in the thick of that also. But, it's a very involved process to design, to build, to make the decision to invest. So where were you? What was happening in your life? And how did you come upon this decision that you and the 4 kids were going to build a house?
I think I was in the same place that so many people are, that when you are in a really, really low place, you are more likely to take the risk and make an outrageous decision. Something that maybe if when your life is sailing along smoothly, you don't want to rock the boat. But I was in a place where I was in a really bad domestic violence situation for many years. And I left that with 4 kids. At the time, they were 17, 15, 11, and 2. And we were financially devastated. We were emotionally devastated. I had a great job.
Mm.
So I had the idea, we needed a place to live, and we were pretty much starting over from scratch, not only from that financial and housing situation, but also from like a family situation. I would say that, my kids were great kids. They got straight A's in school. They cleaned their rooms. In fact, they were probably overachievers in many ways because they controlled those small things in their life that they could when everything else was out of control. But our relationship was just, it was surface level. We were all in survival mode and not relating on some deeper level. So I had the idea that, at first we need a house. I started looking at, fixer-uppers, inexpensive homes, and they were going to be small. And I had 4 kids who were going to have to share rooms. And the kids are like, no, And so YouTube was brand new, literally brand new, grainy videos. This was 2007, no smartphones, sitting at the big family computer, in the den that we shared. And I started, how to find a cheap house. And by coincidence, these videos start popping up as they do on YouTube. How to build a wall, how to frame a window, how to set a foundation block. And every one of those videos, I'm like, gee, I could do that.
And do that.
I
Yeah.
could set a foundation block. And I think especially because YouTube was brand new and there wasn't this collective, massive amount of data that was overwhelming,
Yeah.
it did seem very simple. And people weren't showing outtakes and mistakes. It was hands doing a thing very simply. It was one part of the task at a time. It wasn't this overwhelming, I'm going to build a house. It was, I could do this one thing and I could do that one thing. And I'd never built anything massive. I'd built a bookshelf, which probably surprises no one if you're seeing the video of this. I'm surrounded by bookshelves. But that's all. I'd built a very small bookshelf. But I just thought, I can cut a piece of wood, I can pound a nail. So if I do that a whole bunch of times, I'll have a house.
So at the beginning, when you were kind of seeing these piecemeal videos,
Mhm.
was there some sense at the beginning that maybe you would just do the foundation and then you went from there to, oh, maybe I'll just do the framing? Like, or did you, after watching enough videos, say, I'm going to do this whole thing?
Well, certainly we thought that there would be parts that we would hire out.
Sure.
And in fact, there were things that even the foundation, there were a lot of phone calls, especially after we started the process of me calling people going, hey, could you like come over and finish this for me?
Yeah.
And it was so hard to find. And in fact, a couple of times, like I made appointments and then nobody showed up.
Show up.
So it was this, and of course there was no money. I borrowed money on a construction loan from the bank. So it was very tight what I could have paid anybody to help. So, it was this once I started, we thought we were going to do most of it ourselves. And even the times that we tried to like jump ship, it was impossible from a financial perspective or from a just finding someone like, who do you call for things like that? Like Facebook is brand new.
Yeah.
The internet was very different when you live in a rural setting, and I'm just outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. I was not in a city that I was from. I'm a new person here. So, the connections weren't there.
Wait, when you separated and left your marriage,
Yeah,
you moved to a new
I
geographic.
was in a new place. So it was
Oh,
all very, very isolating. And when you're in a bad marriage like that, a situation where you're in a domestic violence situation, you do isolate yourselves. You are isolated inherently by the perpetrator of the crime, but also you are embarrassed, you are ashamed, of where your life is. So for so many reasons, we were all alone in this.
yeah. I
For
love
so
that you
many.
keep saying we, it's so embedded in the very fiber of your soul to reference the whole experience as you and the kids.
Oh, absolutely. I think if you think about it's a time travel element here. If you travel back to the time when YouTube was new and we didn't have smartphones,
Okay.
we were watching YouTube videos on the computer, and then we had a post-it note that we would draw the picture on, like how to frame a window. And I
Wow.
would carry that post-it note to the construction site, stick it to a wall, and be like, okay, we
Oh,
watched
right. Because it's not like you could be on your phone
no, I had
watching
a
the video while you were doing it. You had to
no.
memorize it,
We
basically.
had to like figure it out, right? So when we got to the construction site, then it was like, okay, we watched 3 different videos of how to frame a window. I've got this little sketch here I made. And I would say, does anybody remember how he did this corner part or the header part of the window exactly, which and my 11-year-old daughter would be like, I've got it. And she'd drag some lumber over and she's like, he did it like this. And I'd be like, okay, then that's how we do it. Like she knew as much about building a house
Yeah.
as I did. So it
Yeah.
was that equal footing that we literally came to the task with the same level of experience and understanding. And we're laughing at ourselves and, pulling all of this lumber out and trying to figure it out. And it was very much that mentality. And, what that did for us as a team, as a family, to learn together and to figure this out together and to give each other credit for whatever ideas we brought to the table, even some crazy over the top ideas, if they would possibly help us through whatever the next phase was. Lifting up things that were impossible for us to lift, but we still had to lift them. How are we going to figure this out? What can we create, build, do to get a bathtub up to the second floor when we don't even have stairs? So it was this this constant process of, okay, together we're a team, we figure this out. I mean, it's not said in some like pseudo credit to my kids. I mean, they were in this and they had to show up every day and slog through the mud and take care of a 2-year-old
I
on
was
the
going to say,
construction
what
site.
happened with the
Yeah.
2-year-olds while you guys were all doing that? What did the 2-year-old do, and who took care
The
of the 2-year-old?
2-year-old was a little naked 2-year-old streaking muddy across the construction site most of the time. You know, he's out here potty training, and if he could grab a lizard in one hand, a frog in the other, and ditch his shorts, he was in. He was in heaven. And, you know, of course, somebody had to be assigned to him at all times. Generally, if you're having a bad day, if you just really did not want to come out here this morning, there wasn't enough coffee in the world to make this fun, you were assigned to the 2-year-old first because he was a blast out here.
Really?
He was the little mascot. And, you know, for so many reasons, he was the reason we were doing it, you
Mm.
know, and it wasn't, let's make his life perfect, but it was to give him the things the other kids didn't have, to give him that security. You know, and they saw it in the same way that I did of like, this is what it's about. We're doing this for this little guy.
Oh, that's so
Pretty cool.
sweet.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is so, so sweet. So, how did you figure out the logistics of it? Because the kids are in school, or were you
Right.
homeschooling?
No, the kids are in school and I had a full-time job. I mean, I
Oh
couldn't
my
quit
gosh,
the day
right.
job and do this. I was a software developer, so I went to work for 8 hours a day and wrote software systems. Went in super early in the morning so I could get off work at 3, grab the kids, hit the construction site. And for much of this, you know, it was not a sustainable schedule, obviously. For much of this, I slept 3 hours a night. That toward the end, I took naps like right upstairs from where I'm sitting now in a little closet on a pallet of cardboard boxes. I would set my BlackBerry for 20-minute nap increments just to make it through, and then get up and go to the office the next day.
Wow. So, where were you guys living while you were building? Did you just rent an
We,
apartment? Or?
yeah, we lived in a house that was up for sale. So
Okay.
we're, you know, waiting for this house to sell that we could not afford to keep.
Yeah.
And also in fear that it would sell before we were finished. And
Right.
then we'd be living like out back in the shop,
Right. Right.
you know. So there were a lot of, you know, really intense time crunches. I qualified for a construction loan, but it was a 9-month construction loan because no surprise, they saw me as a high risk in building this. So I had
9 months
9 months.
before you had to start paying it back.
Right. And it had to pass, you know, I had to have a certificate of occupancy. So I had to complete all of the major portions of the house, have the certificate of occupancy in 9 months.
Did you do it?
We did it to the day,
Wait,
to
you
the day.
built the house in nine
We
months?
built this house in 9 months.
Wow.
Absolutely. Passed every inspection. I built it in the city limits. So, you know, I did my own plumbing. I did my own water lines, gas lines, sewer lines. Uh, so yeah, so we had to, and you know, hauled water from the neighbor's pond to make the foundation, you know, in 5-gallon pails. Yeah, it was very much that massive DIY, passed every city inspection, every bank inspection, and had that certificate of
Wow.
occupancy on the day of the bank deadline.
How did you figure out how to hook up sewer lines? Like, didn't it have to get hooked up to city sewer?
I did, yes, I had to hook into city sewer. All of this was, of course, YouTube, but it was also that poor city inspector who just didn't know what he had stepped into when he was assigned to my house, because he would show up. And this is the crazy thing that I think people don't think about is I didn't have anything that was like an overview, step-by-step process of how to build a house.
Right. Like, what's right?
What
What steps to
what
do?
order do you
Yeah.
do things? Like,
Yeah.
even though I know things that have to be done, there is a specific order.
Yep. Yep.
So I had this list from the inspector of like things that he had to check off before I moved to the next step. And then the bank wouldn't give me the next installment of the construction loan until I had those checked off. So it was this, you know, very integrated process between the city and the bank and me in the middle trying to figure it all out. So the poor inspector would show up and I'd be like, so what are you going to inspect next? You know, and what do you do to inspect that? And I would use, you know, the things that he told me of this is what I inspect next would be like, oh, okay, so that's what I
That's
do.
what I need to do next.
That's what I do next. And then he'd tell me like the gas lines, he'd say, you know, say, well, how do you test them? Like, what do you do? Just like I'm curious about it. And so he, you know, he told me I'm going to put we have to cap off all of the ends, which wouldn't have known to do had I not asked him how he tested it. You have
Right.
to cap off all of the ends, and then I'm going to put a compressor on it to, put air on the lines, and I'll test it with this many pounds of pressure. So I did that before he showed up, and I did more pressure for longer than he said he was going to do, so that I knew ahead of time I would pass. But things like hooking into the city water and the city main were massively terrifying.
Of
So to
course.
do something like hooking up to the city water, I'm 300 feet from the street. So I have a long stretch of water line that I had to trench and bury. And then the water line is on the other side of the street. So I had to bore a hole under the street, which means hiring a piece of equipment to come in and bore a hole under the street and then shut the water off to hundreds of people. Well, I, who have never done this, have to like figure out from my YouTube video how to hook up these lines and cut into this. And then the city has people there watching you to make sure everything's right. And then they turn it all back on and you go. And the city said, if you collapse the street doing all of this, you have to build a new one.
We're responsible
You have
for
to
it.
build a new street. You know? So I
Um,
was, this is one of the best lessons of the entire house was that line, because I
yeah.
was so scared to do that I put it off. I didn't do it. I didn't run the water line. I hauled all the water from the foundation from the neighbor's pond. Took me 2 months, December and January, freezing cold, hauling pails of water, mixing all of this in a wheelbarrow because I was afraid to hook up that water line. Well, here's the lesson. The day I called the city inspector and was like, I'm finished with the foundation blocks. Can you come and inspect? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. I'll come and inspect. Have you hooked up that water line? I was always going to have to do it,
Um,
right? I was always going to
so
have
he
to hook up
wouldn't
that
do the
water.
inspection of the
He wouldn't
foundation.
do the inspection until I had the water line because it has to come through the foundation in a very particular way. That's part of the inspection, right? So, and he knew, he'd been by there. He knew I hadn't hooked it up. So I wasted my children's time and energy, my time in building the house, because now we are really far behind for this entire project from hauling all of these pails of water, when there was never a scenario when I didn't need to hook up the water line, right? There was never a scenario where I'd be like, oh, I don't need water after all.
Right.
Never a scenario where I was suddenly going to have more skills or ability to hook up this water line. I had the same
Right.
set of YouTube videos I'd watched 5,000 times. Like, I just needed to go in and do it. And like, absolute worst case scenario, I collapsed the street. It would not have taken me 2 months to rebuild the street. I could have figured it out. Absolutely could have found the video to figure out what the
Figure out
heck
how
I
to,
needed to do with the street, right?
right,
And it
right.
wouldn't have taken me all of that time. So it was such a great lesson in this, look at your worst case scenario. What could possibly happen here? Can you handle that? Is there any way around the problem? Can you just not do the thing? And all of the answers were pointing to hook up the freaking water line.
Right. Get it
So
done.
I finally go out there to do it. I've wasted all this time and energy. I need to get this inspector out there. I'm behind schedule on everything. I get out there and I've got to hook up this water line. All these people are there, and it took about an hour. It took about an hour.
And that was it.
That was it. It was done. And then we had like at the turn of a faucet, there's
Red
water on the
water.
construction site. Oh, look at that. Like hook up a hose. Let's go.
Oh, I love it.
What a great lesson. What a
Now,
great
didn't
lesson
they
in fear and the things
require,
that hold us back.
right? Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
The only thing that's holding you back is fear. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that is the lesson.
Yeah.
And when you face it and do it, it's usually not as big of a deal as your mind makes it
Right.
out to be, right? What
Right.
a great lesson in living consciously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still use it constantly.
I'm just so curious. Well, from my understanding, building inspectors require licensed professionals to do the work. So how did you get around that? You weren't
So
licensed.
it completely depends on where you live, what is required. So
Okay.
often, if you're building your own home, which you plan to live in for at least 2 years, at least that's the building code here, there
Okay.
are a lot of things you can do yourself, even in
Okay.
the city limits where inspections are required. Of course, if you're building outside of city limits, it's a whole different set of like lack of rules. You can kind of do what you want. So for the city that I live in, I was allowed to do my plumbing, all of that. Again, the gas lines and sewer lines, water lines, but they did not let me do my electric and HVAC.
Okay.
So, and some cities will let you do that. And other cities will say, oh, come take this test. And if you pass this test, you can do the electrical. But it just depends on where you live, what your codes are. So I had to go and research all of the codes to see. And just to be fair, the code book is massive. I didn't read all that. I was asking the inspector a lot of questions. I was going down, when I got the plans approved, you have to get all of your permits to start building, when you're pulling permits to do water, I was asking them questions. What can I do? Like when I showed up the first day, I didn't know what I was allowed to do. I mean, I showed up with a blueprint that my kids and I drew ourselves at our dining room table. Like we planned the house. In fact, I didn't know when we were drawing that what a wet wall was and that I needed that in order to do the plumbing. Like we figured that out after I buy the pipes and they're not going to fit in the wall. And I'm just like, okay, wait, clearly there's something this YouTube video didn't mention that they thought I already knew. So that's how we did it. That is how we did it. A
So did you end up
3,500
doing
square
your own electrical or no,
No, the city I live in, we had to have
you had
an
to have a
electrician.
licensed person?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Well, let's switch gears a little bit to the two books that you wrote. So the first one is called Rise Up, and what's the subtitle to it? I forget.
Yeah, the memoir about us building the house is called Rise: How a House Built a Family.
How a House Built a Family. So what
Yes.
are the takeaways? What are the lessons from Rise, How a House Built a Family?
At the time that I wrote it, in fact, I never planned to write it. I should start there. I was a fiction writer. I wrote fiction books, middle grade, young adult, and I'd just written my first adult thriller. And never planned to write a story about building the house. My kids and I kept it as secret as possible the whole time we were doing it. We were mortified that we were so low in life that this was our best option. But every time somebody heard about it, they were like, oh my God, you have to write that book. So over a 6-year period, I had agents in New York that were asking me to write the book and prompting me. And over a 6-year period, I struggled to write that book. And still thinking like 4 people will read it, right? Because you know, it, is it really that it's a strange story? Um, so when I wrote it, it was just trying to find the best way to tell a story in a way that I think more people like me who had been through something tough, anything tough, you lost a person, anything tough in life, and felt like they were stuck in a place that they didn't know how to get out of, and they knew they were capable of more. I wanted them to have a story that didn't show an athlete who had trained for years and won the Super Bowl, or somebody who had trained for some position and then, succeeded in the Olympics or whatever. Those stories are great, but I was completely inept, the least likely person on the planet to do this. And with a lot of humor and determination, I figured it out. And I wanted people who read that book to come in and say, hey, if this, because it gives the ugly parts, the tough parts, not only of where I came from, the tough parts of what I came from, but the tough parts of trying to figure out how to build a house and trying to make the determination, like, what have I just done to my kids signing them up for this project? Like that's a very real part of having your kids on a construction site for 9+ months.
Yeah.
They had nothing else that they could do. They didn't go to the movies. They didn't have dates. Their high school experience wasn't like anyone else's, and they never recovered all of the things that they lost. It was a really, really tough thing. So, to put all of that in a book and be vulnerable about that and to say, hey, like I made some bad decisions in life and also some bad luck was thrown my way. And through the combination of that, like, here's this crazy thing we did to try to make it better. And in some ways it turned out fantastic. And in some ways, like life is still really tough. So the real roller coaster of life is kind of how I tried to present that story. And I ended up, I won't get into like writing structure, but I wrote it many different ways. And the way that I landed on is I didn't want to have a whole big negative backstory in the beginning and then go into the house building. And I don't like flashbacks. So I did in every other chapter, rise, fall, rise, fall. So it's not told consecutively. It is told that, the fall chapters would be considered consecutive, and the rise chapters are us building the house consecutively. But the story of why we did it is unfolded slowly, everything that we went through in those fall chapters ahead of time. And it was so important to me to have that structure because I built the house with this false idea that if I worked really hard and gave it everything I got for this 9 months, like I could coast for a while after that, right? Like the universe was going to see I needed a break and it was going to like let me coast, you know? And I finished the house, and that's not what happened. Newsflash, surprise to everyone but me. The universe didn't let me coast. Like it immediately slammed me with other hard things. But then other great things came after that.
Mm.
And that's real life. That rise fall pattern is real life. And whatever's happening right now, whatever part of that I'm in, like the other part's about to happen. So I should be ready for the next big happy thing and the amazing thing, but also the next tough thing is there too. And I know that we hear that a lot from, so many different parts of our life, but until we've really experienced it on the really extreme levels, the massive losses and the massive gains, I don't think it sinks in for all of us in the way that it should. I was slow to learn it.
Yeah.
And it was a big part of how I told that story and why I told it in the structure that I did as a storyteller.
Oh, cool. I'm really looking forward to diving into that more deeply. Um, you you talked about like that you've had some really hard falls. I imagine when you moved into the house, there was still a lot to be done. Like the finished work probably wasn't
Oh,
complete,
sure.
the painting wasn't done, and maybe the flooring wasn't installed.
Closet shelves and
Yeah,
yeah.
shelves. Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot left to be done. And yet, on move-in day, you had a tragedy. Do you mind talking a little bit about what
Oh,
happened?
not at all. No. So again, you know what I was expecting and what everybody wants. In fact, when we were writing the movie script, for the story, like everybody wants that Hollywood ending, right? And so often, I've done interviews on shows all over the world, and they're like, "What was moving in day like? Like, tell me the celebration, the pizza party, whatever it was that you had, and who attended." And instead, we moved about half of our things over to the house and slept in here the very first night and woke up the next morning. I'd taken the day off from work to like move more stuff over. I'm exhausted. And I got a phone call that my mom had been, who was 59 and healthy and on the construction site at least once a month to feed us chili or whatever she could cook over a campfire. She had been taken to the hospital and she died before I got there. And she had a pulmonary embolism. And very unexpectedly, I lost her that day and inherited my disabled brother, who she cared for. So I would then be caring for. And the whole world is turned upside down. And the celebration, the moment to catch your breath is not going to happen for years, literally years before you can even pause and think about. And at the same time, I have agents calling and saying, "Hey, will you write this book about building a house?" I had already was in the middle of that, as we finished the house. So it was that moment. It was that gut punch of, "Hey, wait, universe, you were supposed to let me coast for a minute, like a minute."
This was my let down celebration, put my feet up and enjoy
Yeah.
it phase.
Yeah, but what happened is that my kids and I had formed this unbreakable bond out here, this intuitive level of communication where, when we were first on the construction site, trying to communicate with each other what we needed or what needed to be done was impossible. And by the end of the construction, like we could like look over our left shoulder and grunt, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, I'll bring you those 3 tools and your water bottle." Like we could read each other's minds and we knew each other's talents and skills and who could do the geometry and who could certainly not. And that was me. So we leaned on each other's skills and talents. So the day that happened on move-in, I could make one phone call to one of my kids and everything was managed. Everything was managed from other family members to the house to the sewer tank. We have like a not to go into sewer tank details, but we have a grinder pump that goes into the city main and like it was overflowing in our front yard. And we're like,
Of course
what
it
did we do
was.
wrong? What did we do wrong? And they're like, call your plumber. And we're like, me, and
Um,
I'm at the hospital. And it turned out the city did it wrong. The city didn't open the valve after we hooked up. So it was their fault. But like all of that is happening, but my kids are managing it. My
Wow.
kids, who at that time are, three of them in high school, one or two in high school, one in middle school, and one still a toddler, 3 years old, are managing everything and also helping me manage, my brother and the other things that I have to do. And we went through all of that and of course became stronger.
Wow.
But it was because we had built the house. It was
Yeah.
because of what we had done that we were able to handle the next crisis.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think that, that rise fall chapter or chapter structure that I mentioned and how that fits into real life, like it is because we went through those tough times and how we managed those and who we brought in to help us with those that we are then able to fully celebrate those better times,
Yeah.
Again, it took me 6 years to write the book and I had no idea what was going to happen. It sold in a big auction in New York, but still I'm like, 10 people will read it. And even if 10,000 do, what will they think of me? So
Mm.
you're so vulnerable. What will they think? How will they react? Like, will they look at this and say, like, she turned her kids into slaves and built this house? How will they react to the story? And I tried to tell it from such an authentic place, but that's dangerous to do. It's a risk, right? It's a risk. So you have no idea what will happen. And but again, the kids and I are all in it together. Like they all move home for the book release and we're all ready to do it. And then it ends up being a global story. And in 12 months, it had 2 billion with a B, 2 billion views globally within the first 12 months. Um, Optioned for film, television, reality television. I did Good Morning Turkey, Good Morning India, Good Morning Poland, Good Morning Canada,
Oh,
the camera
wow.
crews through the house, and it ends up being this massive thing. And
They came to you from all over
but
the world. They came to
from
you.
all over the world. Yeah. And I became a full-time motivational speaker from that,
Wow.
where I am able to take like lessons from the construction site and
Yeah.
combine them with my 20 years of software development and working in tech and corporate world and teach teamwork, leadership, resilience from a completely different
Perspective.
direction and perspective than most speakers come from,
Yeah.
So, what is strange again, and there are so many positive and negative things that come from all of that. So, just wherever you are, know the next thing is right around the corner.
Right.
The
No
next
matter,
great thing. If you're in a
right.
tough time, if it's uncertain right now, like the next great thing is right around the corner.
And your second book, the second nonfiction, I know you have 7 fiction books. I'm sorry
Yes.
to not give those
Yes.
the limelight today, but
That's okay. No, this is definitely about the nonfiction. So
yeah.
during COVID, I had so many messages that were all, I'm stuck in the same ways that I had felt. And like, I know I can do so much better than I'm doing right now. I'm capable, but even if I know what I want to do, I can't get myself to take that next step. I'm stuck. And I heard that 10,000 times. And so I thought, what I'm using in my motivational presentations, which I wasn't using a lot of during COVID, what I was using was the structure of how to get things done.
Mhm.
And it was a structure that I learned and used on the construction site, and I learned it from how-to videos. I completely learned the structure from how do these how-to videos get us up to do things? Like they don't just show us to do things, they get us to do things we had no intention of doing, sometimes building a whole house.
Right?
So, I thought I know what that structure is. I've researched the structure. I didn't make it up, but it works. And YouTube didn't make it up either. How-to videos didn't make it up. Like it is this ancient structure that is used in goal setting that has been used like since the dawn of humankind. And it works because it works along with how our brains work, with the neuroscience of motivation, with our dopamine, with our serotonin, with the structure of our brain. That's why how-to videos work. So I took all of that, all of the neuroscience, all of the psychology, all of the simple how-to video structure, and I wrote a book called Unstuck. And it is using that ancient psychology that's behind how-to videos to get things done.
That's so,
So
so
it's a simple structure, it's an ancient structure, but it's told within the frame of people from all over the world who've achieved amazing things, some of them using YouTube and some of them long before YouTube existed, but all using that structure. and telling those stories and showing that structure. So that's Unstuck. And the coolest part, maybe not the coolest part of the book, because the whole book's cool, but the coolest thing that happened after I wrote it is when you write a book, you want like a quote to put on the cover, a famous person who loves your book and wants to tell people to read it. And you want, Stephen King in the fiction world or whoever. So after I wrote Unstuck, I was like, who do I ask? I know a lot of speakers and really cool people I've met through all the travels I've done since Rise came out. And I thought, no, YouTube is who I need because YouTube started all of this for me. So that's the structure. So I contacted Steve Chen, who was one of the original founders of YouTube, but one of the guys who started it. And he's like, oh my God, I know your story. And this is the coolest thing in the world. We never imagined when we started YouTube that something like that would happen. Send me the book. I'd love to take a look. And he ended up writing this fantastic little thing about it for the cover. So like nobody probably knows who Steve Chen is, but that to me was the coolest full circle moment. And I would pick him over anyone.
It's so beautiful. And what a conscious choice you made.
Thank you. Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, you could have gone
That's
for
so true.
Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey, and
Right.
you
No,
went for the guy that, really touched your life and made
right.
that impact in your life. This is extraordinary. I want to have you back on to let's just do a whole segment on Unstuck, and we'll go into all
I'd
the
love to.
yeah, so let's do that. And, last question, most importantly, since I'm following in your heels and I'm going to be tearing down my family cottage and rebuilding, what are you doing in September 2024? I need your drive, your
Okay.
intelligence.
What's so funny is people ask me all the time, like, hey, could you come build this addition or could you
Right,
come
what are you
heat my
doing this
dining room or
weekend?
all the time or when I'm speaking, women will be like, oh my God, if you can, I'm texting my husband, like, if you can do this, like my husband can definitely like,
Right?
decorate the nursery. And I'm like, ho, wait just a minute here. You're missing my message. The whole point is I'm saying you can do it.
Right, right. All right, couple last questions. How and where are your kids? How and where are your kids?
Oh,
They've been
my
such
my
central to
kids
this
are
everything.
amazing. Now they are 33, 31, almost 32, 27 and 18. So the 33-year-old Hope, my oldest daughter, she runs her own business and she does PR and strategy for businesses. She and I work together a lot and we are together launching a new thought leadership program.
Nice.
My son Drew has worked as a broadcast engineer and a project manager, and he's been in DC, Denver. In fact, he's headed back to Denver next. My daughter Jada is in Ontario. She married a Canadian. So
Nice.
she's up there and with three granddaughters. So I've got three little girls up there, 11, 3, and 1.5.
Wow.
So I'm constantly popping up there every chance I get. COVID put a little delay in some of that, but it's been great now. And Roman, who graduates from high school, crazy, the 2-year-old when we built the house, he is graduating in May and going on to UA Fayetteville here in Arkansas. Because I still live in the house, which I should have
Yeah.
mentioned. I
Yeah.
still live in the house. I've lived here now for 15 years.
Yeah, I love it. And I noticed none of them went into design, build, remodel, or construction industry.
No. Drew wants to build his own house, and turnabout's
Right.
fair play. Like if I can still lift a hammer, I have to be
Right.
there to help him do that. But
Help
the
him.
rest of them are like, oh my gosh, no.
Been
Which
there, done that.
when reality TV shows were all pitching us and trying to get us to do shows, they all like, want us to have a construction business. And we're like, we
I
never
know.
wanted to be house builders, just to be clear. Like that was
That
not
was
the
not in the vision
one.
board.
We were building a house for us, but that said, I'm always building something. Like I'm building this ottoman with some really cool feet that I
Right.
found to go behind me with this chair. Like furniture pieces and things that like exist in my head, but no one else has created yet. I'm always making something. Small, whether it's needlepoint or quilting or small pieces of furniture, like we're always building something.
So, Cara, if people want to talk to you, hire you, get in touch with you, follow your work, where's the best place for people to find you?
Everything is under my name. I'm super easy to find. Cara Brookins, Cara with the C, carabrookins.com. Or if you forget my name, just Google Mom Built House with YouTube, and it's every language, everywhere.
Right.
You can find me, and I'm out there. But I'm on all the socials under Cara Brookins, and I'd love to speak at your next event or just say hi.
Awesome. So great to be with you. Thanks so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Jackie.